Hello, renegade thinkers. So right after the lockdown in March of this year, I found myself starting to think about my garden and wondered, would it be safe to go to Home Depot or Stu Leonard's where I usually picked up the sort of the herbs and the annuals that we put in our garden? So I thought probably wouldn't be safe. So I went on Amazon and I ordered some seeds. The two seeds that I found were basil and impatiens. Now, I had never ever raised seeds from scratch, and it was a little more challenging than I expected. And of course, by the time I actually planted them, by the way, I didn't actually put them in my little cups with the dirt until May, and they didn't sprout till June. By then, I had already made 2 trips to Stu's to actually fill up our garden. So I did learn some important lessons, though, that I need to share. First, I could indeed raise basil and into viable plants, basil and impatiens, from these seeds, which was really cool. I just needed to start earlier and then actually read the instructions. Some of them wanted to be on the topsoil, some needed to go underneath. The good news is that I now have enough basil in the garden to do like gallons of pesto. Now, as for the impatiens, the variation I chose, that's the one I found online, needed more sun than my urban garden can provide. So they're out there flowerless, which is the whole reason that one might want to plant them in the first place. Okay, lesson learned. Meanwhile, our hydrangeas, those are perennials, came back with a vengeance. So I couldn't be happier with how it all worked out. All right, fine. So what does this have to do with marketing? I'm so glad you asked. First, the social and economic impact of the pandemic has forced marketers to look at their metaphorical gardens in a very different way. New customers are really hard to come by because of this person, the CFO, who is saying no to almost every purchase possibly presented by someone else in an organization. So in that environment, it pays to plant seeds today that you might not be able to harvest right away. Second, not all seeds are created equal. So you really need to think through the offers you're putting out there. Third, don't overlook your perennials, AKA the customers you already have. These may be the best source of incremental revenue you've got this year. And with that tortured analogy, it's time to introduce Heather Zynczak, the CMO of Pluralsight, a training company that has planted a heck of a lot of seeds this year. Heather, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
So first of all, how are you? How's the pandemic been treating you?
We're doing as best we can. We're all healthy, so that should be that we're doing fabulous, because that's number one. And I live in Park City, Utah, which ski towns got hit pretty hard pretty early. So we've been on lockdown and pretty conservative in our isolation strategy for quite a while, but we have the beautiful mountains and beautiful summer weather, so I can't complain.
There you go. And I happened to have been, the last time I was in Park City, I actually left with a broken thumb and a sprained thumb. Yeah, I had quite a ski accident out there. That's not the first time I've hurt myself in Park City. And now friends are starting to ask, can I go anywhere without hurting myself? And the answer is, of course. And I can't wait to get back to Park City, which is one of my favorite places to ski. All right. So before we dive into your demand generation efforts, I want to sort of step back and just, you have a somewhat different portfolio as a CMO than a number of the CMOs that I've talked to on this show, in terms of, I know, like e-commerce reports to you. Can you give an overview of what's in your portfolio?
Yeah, so I joined Pluralsight about 4 years ago, and you're right, it's not a traditional patch. So at the time, Pluralsight, why they hired myself and our former head of sales, was to build out a true B2B enterprise motion. Pluralsight had started out as predominantly a B2C, or I call it B2D, business to developer, because we sell to developers. And they had significant revenue selling to individuals, and they had built some really great revenue selling into companies, but they really wanted to expand that to enterprise. And they'd basically built out a product line that was enterprise ready. Now all they needed to, to your garden analogy, was to hire a CMO and a CRO that could come in and grow these seedlings. So in my group, I have the first and foremost thing that we focused on was building a B2B lead generation motion. And so that's huge. It's everything from all the things you think of, from digital to customer marketing to field and events. And I also have all the traditional things you think of in marketing, product marketing, communications, etc. And I own all digital revenue, which can be up to a quarter of our business. So not small. We do little under $500 million a year in billings. So anything that closes digitally, I have a digital revenue team that runs that. And I've also run at Pluralsight our inside sales team. So whatever acronym your B2B company calls them, your BDRs, your SDRs, but the team that cleans the leads and creates appointments for your sales reps. So pretty strong influence across our go-to-market motion.
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared all that, because that is broader. It's funny, in conversations of late, it feels with CMOs, it's about 50-50 have the SDRs or BDRs reporting to them, and those that don't lament it for the most part, because it's just one more thing that sort of makes it easier when you're handing over a lead to know it's a really good, high quality lead for sales. So, okay. So the real reason though I wanted to talk about that was that because you own e-commerce, you were, in a sense, you're running a business unit. And so do you have a P&L for e-commerce?
We do. So I have a revenue number that I'm accountable to, and I have a budget, and I have the head count that goes into that. But the interesting thing is, one of the reasons this has all stayed within marketing, I hope the other reason is because I've done a good job kind of managing all this, but one of the reasons that our e-commerce or B2C business stays in that is it would have to share resources with the rest of marketing. We have one website, we have one creative team, we have one marketing automation tool. So, I could keep going, but
Sure.
on paid search, for example, it's difficult to buy keywords that are like, no, only look at this keyword if you're a big B2B buyer, or, oh, you look at this keyword if you're purely just an individual. I mean, we've gotten really good at that, but the truth is the lines blur. So even in a normal world, the lines are blurred. Then we actually purposely blur the lines. So one of our biggest motions is what we call B to C to B, or what a good friend and colleague of mine calls it paid freemium. But basically, over 80% of our individuals who sign up for individual subscriptions, or what you call our e-commerce solution, 80+% of those we can map to business accounts. They work at the places we want to sell big B2B contracts to. So we actually have a goal every year of how much we're going to churn out into B2B. And it's a healthy churn. It's like, we're going to take X number of millions of dollars and move these people from individual subscription accounts, and they're going to be on B2B accounts. And it's either that the B2B entity didn't have an account, so it's a brand new, it's a lead for us. We walk into the door at a big company and say, by the way, you don't own Pluralsight, but did you know 80 people in the building are already using it? You should. Wouldn't it be great if you could track what they're doing and assess their skills they're getting? Or it might be an account that's bought 1,000 licenses and they've used 850. And there's 150 people paying for it, and honestly probably charging it in for an employee's expense, that we can move over into a B2B account to make that account even more robust and more successful. So it makes sense to have the e-commerce in that when you think it's a great motion for us to move into B2B.
Yeah, and it surprises me as you're talking about it. I know what happens when that isn't the case. And I got to say, it's probably not the case all the time. And the problem is there's this battle for real estate. You have marketing who thinks of self as brand or B2B and enterprise, and then you've got e-commerce, which is sort of DTC, and there's a conflict in this battle, and it's silly, right? But it happens and it's real. And so sometimes you'll see who's winning, because you can go to the site and it's like all e-commerce, and it's just like, here's our catalog and here's the buy button. And then, or you see the opposite where it's all marketing and you can't even find the darn store. And so it just makes sense. But I'm really struck by how I think it's less usual than you would think, with the exception of companies that are all e-commerce, right?
Well,
And
absolutely. And when I joined, I had this conversation with my boss and our CEO and founder, Aaron, and I said, look, we could split that group and put it as a revenue unit underneath the CRO, but then it's going to compete. And so instead, we actually make really great decisions. Like, we will decide, for example, to have a lower growth rate on our e-commerce business than some of our B2B, because the B2B might have better unit economics, and because we're churning out accounts. And if that person who ran the e-commerce didn't also have responsibility to understand that we have a B2B lead gen goal to hit, they might not be willing to churn as much. They're like, no, I can't churn. Like, I don't want to churn this to B2B. Like, I need to keep all my customers. So that's one example, but I could give you a ton, back your real estate example on websites, where if you don't have a common view, it ends up competitive. So it's been nice having it in one place.
yeah, and I think that's everything there. You really summed it up, because it is always about follow the money. and and if one person's getting paid for this and one person's getting paid for that, it's going to be problematic. All right. So before we take a break, let's just sort of set the scenario. It's March. The mountain's been shut down. It's pretty clear that everybody's going to be in a work from home environment. What, from a brand standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, did you see out there, and what kind of, what was your situational assessment?
Well, it's interesting because we did go into the mode of, what does COVID mean for our employees? What does it mean for our office locations? How do we keep everybody safe? And we went into the mode of, what does this mean for our business? Our big B2B buyers going to be putting budget on hold, et cetera. But we also went into the mode very quickly, almost immediately, of look, we're a very mission-driven company. And our mission is to democratize tech skills across the globe. We honestly believe that, the adage of brilliance is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. And a lot of the people, including myself, that work at Pluralsight are here because we're giving opportunities to everyone, everywhere, to better their skill set and to make a better life. And so we quickly went into the mode of, what does this mean from a mission perspective? What do we have the responsibility to do? And we watched the employment rates plummeting. We watched people struggling to stay at, or not plummeting, the employment rates plummeting, unemployment increasing. We watched people struggling to stay at home, to stay home, flatten out the curve. And we thought, what can we do to the bigger community? And that's really where Free April came from. It came from this altruistic place of, how do we support the community at large, and how do we be true to our mission?
One of the things that struck me, Heather, as you're talking about how helpful it is to have a mission, and one that is so clear. And what that did was it set you up for this world of what I call abundant generosity. And I think that is what, as a frame of mind for B2B marketers right now, it's all about, what can you do for your community? What can you do for your employees? What can you do for your customers? And what can you do for the world at large, that's unique to your brand? So let's talk about, dive into Free April for a second. What was the gestation of Free April? How long did it take you to get from, hey, we can make a difference, to, oh, we're going to give our product away for a month?
Days, maybe a week. So
1 week.
Yeah, and then it was probably days, 3 to 4 days in the deciding how we do it, what we do, and then a week in execution to get us ready. So we started talking about it mid to late March, and it launched, in April, Free April. So the beginning of April. And what Free April did was, gave anybody, anywhere, with just giving your email. You didn't have to give a credit card. This wasn't a trial to buy. Anybody, anywhere, the ability to use our entire platform with no limitations, completely free, for an entire month. And we truly did this. And why it took a couple days to decide is, we are a publicly traded company, and we have fiduciary responsibility to our shareholders. We had to say, how much is this going to impact our revenue? And at first, we were like, we actually thought, and this didn't come to bear, but when we launched Free April, we actually believed it would be a negative to our bottom, to our revenue, to our top line. We actually thought it could be, in the millions, 5 to 10 million negative off. And that was a hit we were willing to take. to live, to our mission. And it didn't end up that way. We actually, we just had an earnings call yesterday, and we actually exceeded revenue goals. And the revenue goals set way before we even, free April was a twinkle in our eye. So it didn't come to bear, but we thought it might, and we still chose to do it. And I think this is the reason. I think when I look at all the offers, what did you call it? Excessive benevolence.
Yeah, abundant generosity.
Abundant generosity. Okay, that's nicer than excessive benevolence. But when I look at all the offers that were out around those times and still in the market around COVID, a lot of them felt really self-serving. So they weren't really giving back. They were like, hey, we're struggling for a tough time. We're going to, extend our normal promotions to be a little bit more jazzy so that we can get more people that we can sell to. And free April wasn't that. And if you look at who signed up for it as well, like it was people all over the globe and in countries and markets that we don't even have a strong presence in. It was truly, and it really went viral. And I think that the generosity terms that went out into the marketplace that really resonated were ones that came from a place of, no, we really are doing this to give back. And was 100% why we did free April, and 100% our expectations of what would come out of free April. That's not what happened, and I don't want to.
Right, but so let's so people understand. If you haven't been to Pluralsight's website, how many courses are we talking about that you could have had access to through that month?
Over 7,000 courses, and a course can be anywhere from 30 minutes to several days. Like this is significant amount of learning that we gave for free.
So, and during this period of time, how many people actually came and took advantage of this offer?
1.1 million.
1.1 million. Okay. Yeah. So how do we get from, we launched this to 1.1 million? How did you spread the word on this?
Well, the first couple days let me tell you, we almost broke every system we had. We didn't, and everybody had a great experience, but it was late nights and middle of the nights, and we did not expect 1.1 million. We thought at best it might be based on, some promotional things we'd run in the past. We thought if we were really lucky, we'd get about 150,000 people. And we got 1.1 million, and a large percentage of those were within the first week. And so what we did to promote it, we did not use $1 extra of marketing spend beyond what my normal budget was. In fact, our budgets in Q2 got cut by about 15%. So I actually spent less money in Q2 than I normally would have. And we didn't put, this was all within our normal budget. And we did do a few paid things, but not many. But it was mainly social. And so we really leveraged the virality of it was unbelievable. We paid a few social influencers that weren't that expensive for us because they're really big in our space. But may not be, like the Kardashians aren't big in our space, and I'm sure the Kardashians are very expensive. So we did use some social influencers, and we did a day called Tech Skills Day, where we do that, it's not the first, we have a Tech Skills Day every year, but we really promoted free April and the Tech Skills Day. So one big thing was just the virality of it on social, having really good content, really getting your community together. All of our authors, the people who teach the 7,000 courses, they're not employees of Pluralsight. They all promoted it heavily. And then it just got picked up by a bunch of people who are like, this is a really great thing. And this gets back to the altruistic. People shared it because it truly was helpful. And then people who used it massively spread it. In fact, we had over 10 million branded images on social media. The press picked it up significantly as well. We had over 750 million press impressions. So the natural things you do that happen when something goes viral were in massive high gear. So that was one. And then the second thing we did is we really looked to our customers, and a bunch of our customers really used it. So we had a ton of really big customers that big companies that had, they use Pluralsight within their tech teams, but they massively promoted it to everybody in the company. So the largest retailer in the world, I won't say their name because I don't have permission, it was promoted on their internal all general Slack channel. So, think if you're a cashier at a Home Depot or a Walmart or one of those, they were promoting this within the company to sign up. And we had a ton of people from our customers that weren't on their tech teams sign up for this. And so that was another surprising one, is just how much our customer community really promoted it as well.
So what in this is, when you get something like 9 times the response that you expect, obviously things are pretty good. I think in our prep call, you also mentioned that of those 1.1 million, a good percentage of those ended up being what I think business emails, right? So suddenly those are the seeds there. And talk a little bit about that group of people and what that meant for your lead gen.
Yeah, so two things on the business side. One, to the point you're talking about, of the 1.1 million that signed up, over 200,000 used business emails. And even more than that, we're still working, we can map back to business accounts. So, 20+% are business leads for us. And those folks were super active in the product. And so this has been a great lead generation tool for us on the B2B side, because it was also 15,000 new logos, 15,000 logos that we don't have a B2B contract with. So of that 200,000 contacts, 15,000 new accounts, which is huge for us in terms of customer base. Now, to be fair, back to your seed analogy versus we had to plant a seed versus we didn't get the plants already to put in the ground. These are users, and they're users who wanted to leverage a free account. A typical B2B buyer that's going to buy a couple $100,000 to $1 million contract with us isn't most likely to use a free April offer. But people work at those companies. And so now we're growing the seeds. How do you get more people in your company? Did you enjoy your free April experience? Can you get more people on your team to do it? Could you maybe do a free trial for your whole group? And then we'll eventually take it up to your dev manager. We'll take it to your CTO. So that, we're growing, that we're in the process of grooming the seeds.
Sure.
And I hope
nurturing.
I'm nurturing, and I hope it turns into basil.
Yes.
And that we have an abundance of pesto, and early indications assume it would. And the second thing I'd say on the B2B side that we didn't think about either is, remember how I mentioned all those accounts that have some tech teams that were using it, that pushed it out broadly? It created a large amount of expansion opportunities for us, because, they had, say they had 500 people using it. They had a contract for 500,000. Now, in some accounts, they now have 1,000 extra people using it in different groups. They're like, hey, we didn't realize that so many of our cashiers wanted to learn JavaScript. Maybe, Home Depot does a program that turns cashiers into engineers. So other companies similar to Home Depot looked at expanding their contracts. So the other surprise for us was how big of an expansion tool it was.
Awesome. We planted 1.1 million seeds. We expected to lose millions. You didn't. And what's interesting to me, I think when people put out a free offer, they sometimes hide it from their customers. Is it because they don't want it to somehow or other depress the value of what they're doing? Instead, it seems like you went to your customers and said, hey, we've got this. Knock yourself out, go expand. So let's just, as we sort of think about the broader lessons here of giving something away, what would you say were sort of what was I guess, lessons learned for you?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, when we first came up with this idea, and it took the couple days, one, I had to convince our CFO, because he was going to have to potentially get on an earnings call and talk about how we missed revenue, and it actually had the opposite. We exceeded revenue, but at the time we didn't know that. And the second tough conversations were with our head of sales. The good news was our CRO, my counterpart, was fully on board. He's fully mission driven. He was great. But some of our sales leaders who were worried about, our enterprise sales leaders, how am I going to hit quota? They had the concern that you're laying out. Like, is this free offer going to cannibalize my sales? Is it going to slow down? And here's the learning. in the past, free offerings that we've had, free trials, free weekends, they have cannibalized sales a little bit. And we've had a little bit of tension in the channels. This didn't at all. In fact, at our quarterly business review, two of our biggest sales leaders that own the largest territories stood up and said free April helped them make their quarter. And I think the learning here is because it truly was altruistic and it was giving back, and it wasn't something that people viewed as, hey, they're offering some free things, we should get our procurement team to drop the price because they've got this free program. No, I think everyone in the community viewed it as, it was giving back. It was helping people. It was, because it was so unlimited and so generous, everybody recognized like, wow, this is a good thing. This, a lot of people referred it to their furloughed employees, to help them when they do come back. So I think the altruistic part is what made there be no channel conflict. And in fact, it furthered some deals along. There were several customers that ended up being willing to buy or being pushed to buy even under budgetary constraints because of the goodwill and the trust that it built with our brand.
And it's interesting. So there are several things that, as I was thinking about this, it's really extraordinary times that we're in, warrant extraordinary actions, and you will be rewarded in ways that you didn't really expect. Had you said this is just a week, or had some limitations to it, or just these classes, or it's, I got to get your credit card, any of those things that you might have added on to it, it would have felt like there was a catch,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And that would have removed the altruistic goodwill. Now, I think the other part that's so interesting in what you're doing, and the analogy or the opportunity for other companies to think about, is if you get more users, one way or another, this is trial. This is trial on an epic scale, right? Suddenly, 1.1 million people who had not tried any of your courses did so. And it's interesting that it was heavily weighted to the first week. And it makes sense, because if I were coming in the fourth week, I'd think, oh, I'm not going to be able to finish the course. I'm not going to bother. So they got in early. In theory, they learned something. But you made a lot of friends.
We did. And the cool thing was, we also didn't know, were these going to be, like when you're selling a house, were these going to be looky-loos? Is it just your next door neighbors coming by to finally see what your bathrooms are like, and how much your house is going to sell for? Was it a bunch of tire kickers? And it wasn't. Our usage stat on this cohort of people were higher than some of our regular usage stats. So these were people who got into the product, super engaged, took advantage of their month, took courses, got their skill IQs, which is kind of like a certification. They wanted to leverage this. The usage on it was extremely high. And what you really want in any of these kind of programs is, if you are giving something away free, and it's not for altruistic reasons, which for us it was, but if you, now that we're looking at these users as seeds that we're now nurturing, you want people to come in and heavily use it and have a great experience. And we had that. And it's made some of our nurturing easier on the back end. I think that's the other thing with free programs, is they've got to be targeted or set up in a way that people can have a great experience and heavily use and heavily take advantage of the experience.
Right. And I think it's tricky with courses, but again, this was sort of a unique time in that people weren't commuting, people were furloughed, people were trying to upskill because they might need to find a new job. All sorts of things were at play. So when the month ends and you can sort of look back at it, was there any kind of deep breaths, or just this sort of, what just happened? How did this happen?
No, it actually was worse, because we did this thing to be altruistic and be wonderful. And you think, oh, the month is over. And then, because it was so off the charts successful, it set up all this pressure from, our CFO and our CEO and our head of sales. And, I felt a little like Glenn Ross, like, give us the good leads, and we were like, no, like, these were people that, we didn't go find them. We can't do a hard sell to them. That's not what this program was about. So it's been an interesting balance to really make sure we keep those people engaged. The easy thing for us was the people who switched to B2B accounts, because that was a nice offer to go back and say, hey, did you know you have an account? You should just go get on it. You can still be free, or you don't have to pay for it. Your company will. So that was an easy one. And we've seen a lot of switches. A lot of people moved on to B2B accounts. We also did special offers. We waited a couple weeks, but we did special offers because a lot of new regions were hit for us. Like India was a really big user of Free April. And so we put in some very, very discounted pricing around the globe for Free April users, but very discounted in geographies that we already have special geo pricing, but we went even further. For some of there was, Brazil, India, others that we put Free April special pricing that wasn't free, but wasn't much above it to continue. And so we're figuring out, like, how do we nurture these people? Because it's a fine line between, going and now selling to them when really we gave them something to be altruistic, but also we do want them to continue their learning journeys. Like
Right.
a month and done isn't gonna, it will be helpful, but they could do more. And so we're kind of walking the balance of how do we really help people continue their learning journeys, and how do we help our business by maybe expanding our B2B accounts, but not feeling like, hey, we really just did this so we could sell to you in May,
Right.
June, and July.
So it's this ease them in to some kind of paid relationship and remove any kind of friction, which is pricing, which you can control. So as you think back on this experience, what is there something you wish you knew at the beginning that you know now?
I wish I would have known how viral it was going to go and how big it was. I think we would have prepared. It was great, but the first few days, it was so massive to our product and the usage. Had we seen that, we might have set some things. So going forward, if we do free offerings this big again, we'll definitely do a lot of the things we did from a marketing perspective to get the virality, engaging key audiences that are going to authentically push it out. But I think we would do more. We would have time to prep, and we'd do more in the product. So we might create some things in the product that make it an even easier experience for first-time free users. Maybe there's a special path, there's special tutorials. We did a little bit of that with landing pages, but with a week's notice, we didn't create a whole new channel in the product to ease people through it. So I would say going forward, the big things on our investment list for future freemium offerings are mainly product related to make the experience even better for people.
Right. And conceivably stickier.
Yes.
Right. I mean, in theory, you've just finished this course. You could then, hey, by the way, if it was baked in,
Yep.
here's course 2 and 3, and we know you want to continue, and because you got this free, here's this special, 50% off kind of thing.
And we have
Plus,
a lot of that now in our product.
already built in. Okay.
We do, but what I would do specifically is for first-time users.
Right.
Because a lot of that is for people who, the other thing we see, we have a monthly, on the e-commerce side, we have a monthly subscription and an annual one. And we see a lot of people come in and buy a month and then come out.
Right.
And then a couple months later, buy a month and come out. Like it's whatever project they're working on that, so there's a lot of, new users that aren't new users. So, but this free April cohort was truly new users. And so we would probably create some experiences in the product to make a first-time user that maybe has no tech. The other thing is a lot of them might not have any tech skills at all. So curating, experiences where they can see the very basic beginning courses, and don't be afraid. Here's the one you shouldn't be afraid to take. So just we would have done some of those things.
I got it. Okay. Well, I'm haunted by when you said 15,000 new logos. In a number of conversations that I've had with CMOs lately, net new logos is this sort of magical thing because it's sort of the great equalizer. If marketing can show, we delivered that. So what is it that is going to help you turn this into net new logos?
To paid logos. I think it's, to be honest with you, I think it's now a nurture process, and a nurture process with our sales guided motion. Of those net new logos users, how do we get them to come back and bring some team members to have some experiences? And then how do we use our sales guided motion to see if we can start to have conversations with other people in the organization? So this really is the seeds. This isn't, normally when you buy a lead, or pay for a lead through, paid media or other things, you can put all kinds of restrictions like content syndication. I only want this level, somebody that I know has budget authority. We don't have that with Free April. So we're really going to have to groom that, and then they're going to have to work their way through the organization. And so I think it's interesting because we had an earnings call yesterday and we were prepping for it. And while we've had great results on the B2B side with Free April, with pipeline it's created, I think it's just scratched the surface. Mm-hmm. It hasn't started to flower yet, back to your analogy. And I think over the next 2, 3, 4 quarters, because I think it's going to take that long, and it's going to take a combination of marketing and digital programs and word of mouth within their company and getting people to try new things and maybe some free offers of these courses or that courses. And then it's going to take a sales guided motion once they hit a certain point to bring in the SDR team to maybe do some calls and say, and with some offers, would you be willing to set up a meeting with so-and-so in your organization?
Yeah, I think that as funny as I hear you, I'm thinking of an episode a couple years ago I recorded with Megan Eisenberg, who at the time was the CMO of MongoDB. And I seem to recall that their business model, that they have a free database that you can download at any time, and that they have 45,000 downloads a day. So marketing was about using 28 different technology stacks to look at those 45,000 email addresses and trying to figure out, using AI and all sorts of other things, where the business value was. And so you could, figure out what the good ones were and slice it up in real time. And it feels like if you were to do this again, that you may need almost a different tech stack than you had before.
Yeah, so it's funny. Megan is a good friend and one of my favorite CMOs, unbelievably data-driven and results-oriented. I just adore her. And we've met at a few things, and it's like-minded people find each other. They're like magnets. And we've had this discussion. And I remember from the very first time I met Megan, and this is even before, maybe she just joined MongoDB, one of her requirements coming in there when she was negotiating her package was more technical resources. It didn't sound like it was vacation days or stock. I'm sure she negotiated all that too, but it was very important to her because she knew how important technology was to get the results. And I'm the same way. I own our MarTech stack. I've written blogs, done other podcasts I'm a geek at heart. Like, I started out as an engineer. I was on a demo yesterday for a new technology we're looking at buying. Like, I look under the hood. And I would say, I don't think we need a new tech stack necessarily. I think we needed more. We've never had this kind of data before. So our old lead scoring algorithms didn't work as great for this. Our nurture, our old AI around our nurture paths didn't have this kind of data before, because we'd never had 1.1 million people sign up free in a couple days. So there might be something in our tech stack we could augment. There always is. As I said, I already have 40 plus things in my tech stack.
Oh my gosh.
But so there's probably something we could augment, but I actually don't think it's necessarily I need a different tech stack. I need the data for my tech stack, to be honest with you, because all of my algorithms, my lead scoring, my AI, everything that's set up for our normal users didn't work because these weren't normal. These were different.
Interesting. All right. Well, I didn't want to get lost in the data too much, but that's fascinating. All right. One last thought. So should we expect Free April again in 2021?
It's funny. I had a conversation on this just before I joined this call. We have a large strategy offsite every year at our company, and it's happening in 2 weeks with our leadership team, all of our C-level executives, and our board. And that's one of the big questions, is how much are we going to invest in this free motion and our digital motion? I don't believe we'll have Free April, because hopefully COVID April was a one-time thing for our planet. That we will not be in that situation again next April. But I do believe that freemium and leveraging free products is going to be, because it was so unbelievably successful, is going to be a big motion for us. And what we need to figure out is not just how. I have a ton of ideas on how, but what are we willing to invest in? because every investment, if we invest massively in the technology to do more to promote free offerings, it takes away from other investments we would do. And that's, so ask me again on August 27th after our strategy offsite.
All right, you got it. I will. Okay, well, thank you so much for really just an amazing story. And for all you listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, you can thank me and Heather by writing a 5-star review on your favorite podcast channel or by sharing the show with a fellow marketer. Let's let this episode go viral, huh? Okay. Renegade Thinkers Unite is written and directed by Drew Neiser. Hey, that's me. Audio production is by Sam Beck. The show notes are written by Melissa Caffrey. Our Duke intern, Prow Smithson, it does the YouTube version. The music was created by the amazing Burns Twins. And intro voiceover is Adam Cornelius. To find transcripts of all episodes, suggest future guests, or learn more about quite possibly the best B2B marketing agency in New York City, visit renegade.com. And until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.